The time is 4:45 a.m. You step outside into the cool morning, completely silent save for the few bird chirps that disturb the deep slumber of the city. The air is crisp, still. The faint smell of dew and laundry detergent reach your nostrils, reminding you of your childhood. At this hour, the sky is painted over with a deep watercolor blue, still holding on to the last remnants of night before sunrise takes over and the rest of the city inevitably wakes up. It's quiet, peaceful. A few warm lights pierce through the dim ultramarine fog and you let out a deep exhale, relishing the fleeting moments of solitude. You begin walking to nowhere in particular, just taking in and appreciating the sights and sounds of the journey itself. What you are experiencing is wanderlust, defined as a strong desire to travel. However, wanderlust is often used to refer to wanting to travel to some place in particular, a destination. But what I want to discuss in this video isn't the desire to travel to any particular location, like sightseeing in a foreign country or taking a vacation. In this video, I want to explore the desire to wander aimlessly without some lofty tourist destination. You've probably felt this desire before. Perhaps you laid awake in bed, yearning to escape into the woods and never return. Perhaps you long to roam the streets late at night to escape from your daytime responsibilities. Perhaps you considered driving across the country and seeing where it took you. So then, what is wanderlust? Why do we experience it? And how can we find examples of it in the movies we watch? Wanderlust originated from German Romanticism, combining the German word wandern, meaning to hike, and the English word for desire. It makes sense then that wanderlust is often used in the context of connecting with nature, even from its origin itself. Of course, the benefits of wandering out into nature have been reiterated to death, reducing stress, improving mood, improving cardiovascular and mental health, and more that every self-help book has become intimately acquainted with. But not everyone walks because of these supposed medical benefits. For some, there's a deeper, less concrete reason for their wandering. Maybe they walk as a form of physical and mental escape from their responsibilities, isolating themselves in the foliage, a separate realm that provides them a respite from the hectic bustling of daily life. Or maybe they walk to obtain a sense of peace and quiet in today's world, hearing only the soft whistle of the wind in the leaves. But what about wandering not away from cities, but into them? For those living in Paris in the 19th century, the role of the observer was referred to as the concept of the flaneur by the writer Charles Baudelaire. The flaneur was, quote, someone that walked through a city, watching but not participating in the things they saw, unquote. Unlike the nature-shaded strolls of the modern salaryman, the flaneur was a ghost among men, a spectator of the daily activities of others. Baudelaire himself stated that, quote, the crowd was an enormous reservoir of electricity that gave him the opportunity to be away from home and yet to feel at home anywhere, to see the world, to be at the very center of the world, and yet to be unseen by the world, unquote. Many flaneurs were artists, using their silent observations to inspire their paintings. To the creative eye, their wandering was both aimless and intentional at the same time. Works by artists like Edgar Degas and Pierre-Auguste Renoir embody the essence of the flaneur, depicting civilians commuting cobblestone streets as if the artists themselves were invisible, providing a snapshot into the zeitgeist of the 1800s. After the invention of photography, however, the flaneur was revived once more, inspiring a wave of street photography that continues to be popular today. Urban photographers, like their artistic predecessors, aim to blend into their environments, capturing beauty in everyday chaos. With photographic techniques like varying shutter speeds and exposure, street photographers manipulate the world around them to provide social commentary, document their environment, or express their own creative visions as the modern-day candid observers. But as much as artists play a role in manipulating their environments, so too do environments shape their inhabitants. Inspired by Baudelaire's flaneur, the term psychogeography was defined by theorist Guy Debord as the study of how different places make people feel. To examine this, psychogeographers drift or wander through cityscapes. Psychogeographer Thomas de Quincey stated, quote, "On Saturday evenings, I've had the custom of wandering quite far, without worrying about the route or the distance," unquote. Psychogeographers then can be seen as an alternative form of the flaneur, examining how architecture and city layouts can affect our subjective emotions. This mutual shaping between the observer and the observee can be found today through modern fiction, which is what I will analyze in the next chapter of this video. The 2012 film The Perks of Being a Wallflower might not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think of examples of wanderlust in fiction. After all, what does a coming-of-age film about a teenage boy struggling with mental illness and social expectations have to do with wandering? Well, I want to focus on the final and arguably most iconic moments of the film. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That last scene where, despite the repressed trauma that Charlie has been through, he and his friends embark on a night drive through a tunnel while listening to music. As Charlie stands up in the back of the truck, he recites his iconic line, quote, "This one moment when you know you're not a sad story. You're alive, and you stand up and see the lights on the buildings and everything that makes you wonder. And you're listening to that song and that drive with the people you love the most in this world. And at this moment, I swear, we are infinite," unquote. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you don't have to be familiar with the plot or backstory of these characters to be moved by this monologue alone. In this moment, Charlie forgets his traumatic past and his worries of the future, living only in the present and relishing the joy that comes with it. They aren't driving anywhere in particular, but the act of wandering and experiencing all the sights and sounds of the city is enough to fill them with a measurable appreciation of life itself. Rather than the detached observer role of the traditional flaneur, Charlie embodies someone who not only observes his environment, but experiences all it has to offer, providing an emotional perspective in contrast to the psychological or creative purposes of wandering that motivate the psychogeographer or street artist. After all, even if there is no destination, why must there be some external purpose to wandering? Is the simple act of driving at night and being moved by the beauty of the moment not enough? Furthermore, the traditional concept of the flaneur is often solitary, a lone observer drifting through the street. But in The Perks of Being a Wallflower, it's shown that wandering with someone else can be even more valuable, providing a sense of connection that you can't find anywhere else. Rather than accompanying someone on an errand or on the way to a shared destination, I'd argue that wandering with someone to nowhere could be the ultimate form of connection. It's a way of saying, even if there's nowhere to go, I would go with you just to be in your presence. Notice how he says, "We are infinite," instead of "I am infinite." There is value in companionship in its purest form, wandering with someone for the sake of being with them for a little longer. Harkening back to the flaneur, Charles Baudelaire wrote on his friend Constantine Guise that, quote, "He desired nothing more than to merge with the throng and to dwell in the ebb and flow, the bustle, the fleeting, and the infinite," unquote. Traditional flaneurs like Baudelaire might have been attracted to wandering the streets due to their perception of the crowded environment itself as infinite. However, Charlie states that we are infinite, not the city or the crowd or the streets. This might seem counterintuitive, given our insignificant scale in comparison to the sprawling metropolises of the world. On both a spatial and temporal scale, the cities we live in are both larger and will last longer than our own tiny lifespans. I interpret Charlie's "we are infinite" statement as meaning they have infinite freedom and potential to achieve whatever they want to do in life. This would make sense thematically, since the ending shows Charlie's optimism to move forward despite his past traumas that have haunted him. I also think this could mean that Charlie perceives the moment itself to be infinite, as he will remember that feeling of freedom and appreciation for the rest of his life, forever wandering and chasing that high. The Perks of Being a Wallflower, through Charlie, presents a version of the wanderer that focuses not on artistic inspiration or scientific understanding, but emotional appreciation of the world and life. It teaches us that there doesn't need to be a purpose for wandering to have meaning, and that companionship and connection can reveal the true value of aimless travel.
望起他，等夜忘掉了一切。
Director Wong Kar-wai's 1995 film Fallen Angels follows the storylines of a hitman, his partner, and a mute delinquent businessman as they wander through Hong Kong's nightlife. Although their storylines are disconnected, they all share a desire for purpose and connection as they drift from one place to another. For the hitman, he drifts from task to task, becoming increasingly frustrated with his repetitive and unfulfilling life. For his business partner, she is emotionally infatuated with the hitman, yet he always remains out of her reach, and she remains endlessly searching for him. For the delinquent, he wanders through others' lives and businesses at night, breaking into and repurposing their equipment to make money for himself. If the perks of being a wallflower exemplified the solidarity of friendship and wandering, Fallen Angels is the opposite. All three characters wander the neon-lit streets in search of something real, some sense of belonging and purpose, some intimate connection with another, yet, even when surrounded by people, they remain disconnected and detached, only experiencing fleeting relationships, like the hitman's brief relationship with a woman named Blondie, or the delinquent's unreciprocated feelings for a girl named Charlie. Although Charlie regularly cries on the delinquent's shoulder and vents about her life, she doesn't care for him the same way he does for her, evident through her standing him up and not acknowledging him. The delinquent wanders the city not to find some place in particular, but to find something, to find genuine connection with someone in a world of isolation, made even harder by his inability to speak. He even states that, quote, "We rub shoulders with many people every day," unquote, yet for most, he feels no mutual spark. The hitman's partner wanders for the same reason, constantly thinking about and searching for someone who wouldn't do the same for her, ultimately leading to a resolution not to become emotionally attached to her business partners. This dual purpose ultimately brings the two together at the end of the film, where the delinquent and the partner share a motorcycle ride through a tunnel. The partner states, quote, "Actually, I hadn't been that close to a man for a while. The road wasn't that long, and I knew I'd be getting off soon, but at that moment I felt such warmth," unquote. Meanwhile, the delinquent states that he knew that, quote, "they'd never be friends or confidants," unquote, and that there was no chemistry, demonstrating his awareness of the shallow nature of their connection. Yet, they both cherished the moment nonetheless. Even if they both knew that they'd never see each other again, these two lost souls, drifting through Hong Kong, managed to cross paths for a brief moment, and in that moment, they both felt comforted by each other's presence and the unspoken connection between them, temporarily forgetting their loneliness. They were lonely, but they could be lonely together, and for that short bike ride, that was enough. Both The Perks of Being a Wallflower and Fallen Angels feature nighttime tunnel scenes as their ending sequence, yet they couldn't be more different. While The Perks of Being a Wallflower shows connection at its most intimate, and the joys of wandering with the people you love, Fallen Angels shows how hard they can be for many. For Hong Kong's night crawlers, that kind of real, genuine closeness is hard to come by, and even in the tunnel, the two characters are bonded only by circumstance. To both, they are just another shoulder to rub against, another face to forget in the crowd as they continue to wander in search of an intangible destination. But is there still meaning and value to be found in that kind of bond? Even if it's brief, the act of wandering together, just to not be alone, is real. The warmth their presence gives each other is real.
Put your head on my shoulder, hold me in your...
The tunnels in both the aforementioned movies symbolize a space of transition and movement, whether it be from one stage of life to the next, or something more ambiguous. Notably, the final scene in Fallen Angels is the only time we see the sunrise during the entire film, representing a sense of optimism on the other side despite everything. It provides hope that maybe someday they will find what they're looking for, and their restless drifting can end. Ultimately, the purpose and method of wandering can be different for everyone. For some, like the artistic flaneur, it's to passively observe and find beauty in the mundane aspects of life. For others, it's to escape the past and actively experience the freedom of exploring the world, or to search for intimacy in a society that deprives people of it. Nonetheless, we all wander, whether it's physically from place to place, or metaphorically looking for purpose and meaning. In today's world of strict routines and structure, Sometimes it's important for us to take a deep breath and recognize that it's okay to be directionless. It's okay to still be searching, or to not even know what it is you're searching for. It's okay to do something for the journey, not the destination. It's okay to not be somewhere yet, as long as you're moving.